Lawrence Stroll spent $1 billion building the perfect Formula One team. He hired Adrian Newey, the greatest car designer in the history of the sport. He signed Fernando Alonso, a two-time world champion still driving at the highest level. He built a brand new factory, a state-of-the-art wind tunnel, a driver-in-the-loop simulator. He secured the full financial backing of Saudi Arabia. And then Honda showed up. Because right now, Aston Martin is facing a crisis so bad, they actually considered not going to Australia at all. The engine vibrates so badly it destroys its own battery. They finished preseason testing with the fewest laps on the entire grid. And Fernando Alonso, who has lived through this exact nightmare before, is watching it happen again in real time. So come with me as we try to understand exactly how this happened, why Honda is having the same problem it was a decade ago, and what it means for one of the greatest careers in Formula One history. Before that, if you are new here, please subscribe. That really motivates me to work more on such video. But first, let's go back to the moment this dream was supposed to begin. On paper, Aston Martin 2026 was the most exciting project in Formula One. Lawrence Stroll had spent years building toward this moment. He had the factory, he had the money, he had the engine deal. And in September 2024, he got the final piece. Adrian Newey signed with Aston Martin. Newey is not just a good designer, he is the reason McLaren dominated in 1998. The reason Red Bull won 4 consecutive championships. The reason the paddock stops and stares every time he puts pen to paper. When Newey arrives at your team, you don't just get a car designer, you get a philosophy shift, a complete rethink of what a Formula One car can be. And the 2026 regulation reset gave him the perfect blank canvas. Add Fernando Alonso to the cockpit, a driver who at 44 years old still commands more respect from his peers than almost anyone on the grid. And you have a team that looks, on paper, like it belongs in the conversation with Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull. That was the dream. So what went wrong? And why did it go wrong before a single racing lap was turned? Let's talk about what happened when the car actually ran. Barcelona shakedown, day 1. 4 laps. Then the car stopped at the pit lane entrance and didn't come back out. Bahrain week 1. Lance Stroll spun into the gravel on day 1 with a technical failure. Fernando Alonso lost an entire day to a battery issue on day 2. Honda then admitted they were running so short on spare parts that they had to limit runs to 30-minute stints with mandatory gaps in between. And on the final day of testing, 6 laps. Then Aston Martin packed up with over 2 hours still left on the clock. 6 laps on the last day of preseason testing. Every other team on the grid managed a full race simulation. Aston Martin couldn't even get close. Here is the technical reality underneath all of that. Honda's V6 engine produces vibrations that are directly damaging the hybrid battery housed inside the chassis. The battery fails because of how the engine shakes, and the engine, according to sources inside the paddock, is lacking around 80 horsepower in the conditions needed to recharge that battery. In plain terms, the engine is not powerful enough to charge the battery it needs to function. And when the battery drains, the car becomes energy-starved on every straight. Their top speed in testing was 303 kilometers per hour. Verstappen's Red Bull hit 344 on day 1. That is a 41 kilometer per hour gap. That is not a different setup. That is a different category of car. Aston Martin considered invoking force majeure and not going to Australia at all. Force majeure is a legal clause that allows a team to withdraw from a race due to circumstances completely outside their control. And for a brief window, the situation with Honda's spare parts was so critical that this was genuinely on the table. They couldn't go. The engine situation was that bad. What stopped them was not confidence in the car, it was the Concord Agreement, the contract every team signs to participate in Formula One. Breaking it would have meant paying significant compensation and triggering a PR disaster for the sport right at the start of its biggest regulation change in history. So the AMR 26 will be in Melbourne. But the honest internal target is not points. It is not a strong result. The goal is to pass the 107% qualifying threshold, just to be allowed to start, and then run for a handful of laps before retiring. For a team that spent this much money, with these people, pointing at this moment, that is a heartbreaking place to be before race 1. Here's the part of this story that makes it genuinely painful to watch. Fernando Alonso has been here before, Not something similar, not a comparable situation, the exact same situation. In 2015, Alonso returned to McLaren because Honda was coming back to Formula One. The promise was a works engine partnership, factory integration, a pathway back to championships. Instead, McLaren finished 9th in the Constructors' Championship. Honda's engine was underpowered and chronically unreliable. The integration between the aggressive McLaren chassis concept and the Honda power unit was a disaster from day one. At the 2015 Japanese Grand Prix, Alonso got on team radio and called the engine a GP2 engine. He said the performance was embarrassing. He said they were 30 kilometers per hour slower than their rivals. Across 3 full seasons with McLaren and Honda, not a single podium. Now in 2026, an unreliable Honda engine, integration problems, a car that looks ambitious but can't deliver. And Alonso in the cockpit watching it happen again. The cruelest part of all of this is what Alonso came to Aston Martin for. He had waited his entire career to work with Adrian Newey. 2 of Alonso's world championships that should have been his, 2007, 2010, 2012, were taken by cars that Newey designed. He knew what Newey was capable of. He had seen it from the other side for 20 years. This was supposed to be his chance, and Honda may have taken it from him again. Is there any way back? This is the question everyone in the paddock is asking right now. The honest answer is yes. But it will take time that Aston Martin may not have. Andy Cowell, the man who led Mercedes to multiple world titles as head of their engine department, has been sent to Japan. He is working directly with Honda's team in Sakura to try and solve the battery failure issue. A dedicated crisis unit has been set up connecting Aston Martin's engineers with Honda's headquarters. Newey himself is understood to be involved in communicating with Honda about the power unit problems. And Alonso publicly is staying positive. He said everything can be fixed. He said he is optimistic. He said there is a solution in place, but the clock is running. Here's what makes this situation genuinely different from 2015, though. The Aston Martin car, when it actually ran, showed glimpses of something. Through medium and high-speed corners, without the downshifting and energy recovery demands, the AMR26 looked competitive with some of the faster cars on the grid. Newey's design philosophy is visible. The suspension geometry, the aerodynamic concept. This is not a fundamentally bad car. It is a potentially great car being destroyed by an engine that is not ready. And that distinction matters, because if Honda can fix the reliability, and they have done it before eventually, what Newey has designed underneath could be something very special. The question is whether they can get there fast enough for it to matter. The billion-dollar dream is not dead, but right now it is on life support. And Honda is holding the machine. Australia is going to be painful for Aston Martin. The first few races might be even harder. But the one thing you should never do in Formula One is write a team off completely when they have Adrian Newey designing the car and Fernando Alonso driving it. These 2 people have forgotten more about winning in Formula One than most people will ever know. The question is whether Honda gives them the engine to show it. Drop your prediction in the comments. Does Aston Martin find their way back by mid-season? Or is 2026 already a write-off before it begins? Subscribe if you want to follow every chapter of this story through the season, because one way or another, this is going to be one of the most dramatic narratives in Formula One this year.